Oi, gente, tudo bom? Aqui é a Rai, ou Ray, como vocês preferirem chamar. Hoje eu tô aqui para mostrar para vocês a entrevista que eu fiz com o KC da NIBCARD. A NIBCARD é uma empresa nigeriana de board games e é responsável por manter uma comunidade estreita entre gamers e game designers, além de ajudar os game designers da Nigéria a produzir os jogos localmente. Além disso tudo, a NIBCARD ainda é o primeiro board game café da Nigéria, que foi feito com financiamento coletivo. Mas o Casey vai falar mais sobre isso durante a entrevista. Eu tô aqui para dar um pequeno aviso. A gravação teve alguns problemas de vídeo, isso foi majoritariamente culpa minha. Foi minha primeira vez gravando esse tipo de entrevista e eu acabei me embananando. Mas eu chamei a Klebs, que é uma editora incrível, e ela vai me ajudar a contar essa história para vocês da melhor maneira possível. Eu espero que vocês saiam daqui, assim como eu, tendo aprendido muito com o Casey e muito empolgados para jogar os jogos da NIBCARD. Village War, inclusive, está disponível no Tabletopia durante a feira. E vai ter gameplay lá no meu canal, hein? Fiquem ligados. Eu e a Klebs esperamos que vocês aproveitem essa experiência ao máximo e saiam daqui tão felizes quanto a gente.
I'm so glad to have you here. I'm sure all Brazilians are watching are also very, very happy. We love to learn more about different cultures and things that run away from the norm, like European board games and things like that.
Yeah.
We here in Brazil are living a moment of building our culture through games. So we're building our own games right now, and I see,
Awesome.
and I see you with NIBCARD doing the same thing. So I would like you to talk a little about NIBCARD, the creation of the starting process and the cafe that you have, and also. I'm getting ahead of myself. Sorry. So go ahead and talk about
the Ray, thank you so much. Absolutely love it to be on this platform. It's a new one. We've never been interviewed any platform from Brazil. So this is a huge honor. So thank you. So NIBCARD, I think it's good to start from the name. NIBCARD, it's an acronym. It stands for Nigeria Board, Card, Role Play, and Dice Games. So this is because we want to be able to give our voice or add value to, in quotes, the board game industry in Nigeria. And I'm using quotes because it's still in the infant stage. It's really in the infant stage when you talk about tabletop games. But how did all of this started? In a simple sentence, get it out. It started from boredom. I know it's weird, but it's actually boredom that started the whole NIBCARD. So in 2013, we had this strike from the university, and it wasn't time specific. So at each week we kept hoping that the strike would be called off and we'll all go back to school. And this was what we were doing for 6 months plus. And I think I remember telling a friend we should think of new hobbies. We tried a lot. We tried weightlifting. You can see it. So we tried weightlifting. We tried going to viewing centers to play games. We even thought of going to secondary schools to teach, but not work. And then we said, okay, why not just do something that will keep us sitting down? And I sketched the first game on the cardboard. But the thing is, when it was designed in 2013, and we played it probably 2-3 times, I kept it away because there was no community. I didn't even know it was a thing. So I kept it away until 2015, when I was part of a cross-cultural team. Team. There were young people from UK, there were young people from Kenya, and then there were also us from Nigeria. And we lived together for 3 months. And it was in that situation where, that environment, I saw that games were more. So they brought new games that I've never seen in my life. And, we already had the classics in Nigeria, the Monopoly, Scrabble, Ludo, chess. But I saw new games and they were more fun. They were better. And they were bringing people together, people with different beliefs and all of this. And I now say, hey, guys, I have something like this that I designed, but I'm not sure if it's even playable. And then we all tried it because I always carry that cardboard sheet, luckily. And everyone were excited about the thing and said, you know what, we like this, but we feel like it's so long. I need to do another one that we can play in, say, 30 minutes. And I took it up as a challenge. And when that was done, that was when I knew that, okay, this could be a thing. And immediately I became conscious of it. I started learning how to design. I started watching a lot of YouTube, how to make it. Which brings us to where we are now. Every other thing that came after that discovery for me has been out of my... When I saw that the games could be enjoyed, at the time it was still prototype. And I started thinking, how do I make this? So I started researching, and most of the research took me to Asia. So you have to make it in China, and I could not afford it. It's very expensive to do anything. So I started watching YouTube, like, how do I now solve this problem? Because it had to come out. And that was how we started doing a lot of try and errors and to be able to make our first prototypes. And then when the prototype was done, we started thinking, now, where can we go play these games? Because right now, I'm no longer in a team of young people that are excited about games. Now, this is real life. And we said, how about going to lounge, going to sit out, going to places with a see crowd and introduce these games to them. And we started that. I remember we used to carry a big box or wooden box of game prototypes. And from there, we started thinking again. Now we've seen that people want a closed, safe space to play games. And how do we solve this problem? And that was where the idea of the cafe came out. And we crowdfunded for the cafe, and we got the cafe. It's on the second year now, and a lot has happened. So many amazing people came coming to play games, and we started seeing most of the things we were dreaming about in 2016. We started seeing some of them now, and all of them are a result of need. So right now, we started thinking, okay, we just finished a couple of videos, and that was because of SPIEL. Because we now said, we've been given this opportunity to show against a huge audience. Now, what do we need to do? And we say, how about we do how to play video? How about we start doing board game teasers and trailers? And these are things I did not even plan we'll do at the beginning of the year. So, needs kind of give us opportunity to grow. And then once we go into it, we start looking for how to make it better and then how to make it sustainable. I think this is pretty much, sorry I said a lot, but this is pretty much how NIBCARD started and what NIBCARD is. So basically what we want to achieve is to be able to add, like I said before, add value to the Nigerian gaming industry. It's already existing before us. We did not start it, yeah, because there are a lot of chess clubs. In fact, Nigerians are winning in the Scrabble competition globally. So Nigerians already play games, but the challenge is there are no new games to play, and then there are no awareness that there are new games to play. That's where we come in. So we try to merge foreign games to Nigerians and then Nigerian games to the world. Okay, I think it should be said that before the campaign, I already failed in 2 campaigns before, so it wasn't the first. But what I think what was the fact that we are consistent. From 2015, almost every day we share a post. So we are showing people playing games on the street, under the sun, under any weather actually, apart from here. We are showing people new prototypes. We kept talking about what we wanted to do, and we were doing it. So when we did the crowdfund, it was the board game, the tabletop industry is amazing. It's welcoming. So people took it personal and started sharing to new networks. Because if it was just our own network, we wouldn't have. And we did not do any marketing. So it was people spending themselves. I remember there were. I searched for the campaign and I saw in a different website I had no idea existed, and people were talking about me. Some were defending me, and over 200 comments. Some were defending me, and some were like, "Are you sure it's not a Nigerian scammer?" And so that's why every day I will keep saying how amazing the industry is. So I think that's how it happened.
So I think it is amazing. And I think you received a lot of support from the global community, right? Because I saw in your website that you had like support from some gaming groups in Berlin or something like that.
Yes. So we have a Brooklyn Games Lab. That was the biggest shock of all. So Robert is amazing. Robert chats me up and said, "Hey, I saw what you guys are doing, and he asked a lot of questions to make sure we are doing the right thing, and he provided guidance and all. And then the next thing, it's just overwhelming. I'm showing you how we felt that day. So Robert meets up the fund we are looking for, and that gave the whole campaign a boost. And that was not even all. Both from Basta Game Cafe in Denmark, when the campaign was successful, just chatted me up as well and said, you know what, how about we do a game drive, and we'll see what we can get, and then we can ship them to you. And none of these games exist in Nigeria. It's something I've said, and I'm not even saying arguably. None of them exist. Just few of, maybe if you have friends who stay overseas, or you've been to, and then you come back with these games. But you don't see them in the stores to buy them, so you don't have them. So it was really important that it happened.
Yeah, now you're kind of creating a community around NIBCARD. And the thing I love most, I think, about your website is that you show people from the community. So you have the sections where you introduce couples in the board gaming industry, like game design couples, and you also have a piece about a woman who played like more than 100 games, and she talks about that. And I think it is amazing because you are introducing and creating a community that is very together, it is so great what you're doing. Congratulations. It is.
Thanks. You know what? Let me shock you. The lady is here.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Fresh is here. What actually inspired that post was people usually come in and they expect that I've played all the games, and I've not even played up to 30. I've not. I'm like, hey, there's somebody that's played way more. And so it became a conversation. We now say, you know what, when we reach so targets, let's just show you that, you've done this number of games. And it even inspired more people. So we have more people coming in and say, somebody did 100, I will know how many I want to do with this little amount of time. Almost all the time they run away. But that's the spirit where people could see that someone in 2019 was able to play 100 games, and now she has even played more than the 100 games. And that was our last year. And then couples in the industry is something that, if we have couples in the industry, it's almost assured that the whole family will be in the industry. And that is the most sustainable way of bringing people in the industry. When it's family, so it's something they talk about, it's something that brings them together. And so if you design new games, they want it. And our economy does not really believe that the tabletop game industry is a source of livelihood, or can be a source of livelihood. But now when we show that there are couples that are actually doing it and they are fine, to inspire other people to do that. So that's why we did that.
That is amazing. And you also you have a lot of games in your catalog that are about Nigeria and Nigerian life. Like you have that one that I loved. It is So You Think You're a Nigerian. I think it is the
yes.
I was looking at it. It is such a great game. So you have this promotion of the way of life, and you also have this conversation with your culture inside the games and while making the things.
Absolutely. It's actually one of the games that the first time I saw it, I felt this exact way you felt. It was designed by, I don't know, one of the couples there. You see Bamen and Ismaila. So both of them worked on that game. The first time I met them, I was so stunned. Like, how did you guys even come about? Because it captures history, and then in a fun way. And we don't teach history in Nigeria, so we don't teach history in our school. So that's why it's even more important that we promote that game. So when I played it the first time, I loved it.
That is amazing. And you, as NIBCARD, you also help people that makes game manufacturing those games, because it is a hard step, like from the idea of having a game to the really having a game in front of you.
Yep.
So
I agree. It's actually very, very difficult. I know firsthand because I tried. When you Google, you see those informations. They are there. It can be done, but it's the process now that is very difficult and very expensive. And that was why we started cracking. How do we make it here in Nigeria? And maybe when we eventually want to ship it to the world, then let's now think of the shipping costs and all of those. And it's been very, very, very good in the sense that people now know that people in Nigeria, we try as much as possible to tell everyone in Nigeria that once you have all you need is an idea. To be honest, you don't even need an idea. If you just want a game, you can just come to us and tell us why you need the game, and we can create a team and mechanics for you within period. Tell us a little something. But people can now do it now. And it's all solving people's problem. Since December, we've manufactured 4 games for Nigerian designers. And it's something that if I'm reflecting, I tell myself, hey, I think we're on the right trajectory, because if we did not exist right now, those games probably will not be out, or it would have been out in another way that would have been a bit stressful for these designers. So it's something that, to be honest, if I'm reflecting, I take pride in that.
Another thing that you did, and I think it is an amazing thing, is the AB convention. It's the African Board Game Convention. It is the first game convention in West Africa, right? Could you tell us a little more about that?
Okay. Do you know why I'm a bit bold answering all these questions? Usually, I would have been dodging some of these questions. We just did a session with Bez, and we talked about imposter syndrome. And for 2 hours, we are talking about how this has affected a lot of people. Forgive me if I'm being a bit confident answering, so that is one of the things we all agree. So, sorry. But the African Board Game Convention is a yearly gathering of game enthusiasts, designers, or anyone that just is curious about tabletop games. We started in 2016, and it was started by myself and Zainab. So we started it, but Joy has been the one that's been pushing it since 2017. So basically, we wanted to, when we started, we didn't know it was the first in Nigeria. We didn't know it was the first in West Africa. Those are news people now saying those, so we are putting them. But it was just in 2016, when, just like what I said, when the games we are designing, we are going to launch and all of this. So when we saw that a lot of people were scattered in Abuja, but they love playing games, so we said, why not try to bring everybody together in one place and see where this thing goes. I mean, we saw things like Ascend, we saw GenCon, like, we have to start one now and then see how it's going. To be honest, I get intimidated when I open some boxes of games. Like when you see how do I beat this? Not that I want to beat it, but how do I make someone see this box on a shelf and leave this box on a shelf to get that tiny one that without this amazing design I have, but I always tell myself that this is not the what we want to achieve, not yet. It's our hope that in the future there are new designers in Nigeria that would be able to do those things and even better. But right now we want to tell people that it's not just Monopoly, it's not just chess, it's not just draft. No, you could play other ones. And just like you, what you're doing now, we are also bringing some role play games we played when we were kids, but we did not know they were categorized as role play games. So we were just having fun as kids. Now, what we want to now put them on the board so that people can still play, and it brings out that nostalgic feeling, that feeling of childhood. But now we'll name it role play. And guess what? Tomorrow they will now know that, tabletop games are made of role play. And we are familiar with this because we've been doing it since we were kids. So that's part of the thing. I will actually go look for this group.
So NIBCARD has 24 board games, right? What are the board games that make the most successful ones? The ones that the people play the most?
Usually I don't answer those questions. But if I'm supposed to say it's social party games. And to be honest, it's also a way that we use to calculate to know, where we are. One of the goals we are looking at is that people can walk into the cafe, 2 people, 3 people, 4 people, and they'll sit down and they'll figure out the rule book by themselves and, enjoy a game, spend 4 hours playing games. That's what we are hoping for. So that's the culture. But most time, we have that happening, but it's very few. But most games that are played are party games where you see more than 5 people and 8, 10, and they are shouting, charade kind of game. And we have concentration. We play just like the way you love concentration.
It was amazing. I loved it so much. I wanted to play it with all my Brazilian friends, and I hope something happens and it gets translated real soon to Portuguese because we need it here. It is an amazing game.
It is. It's actually a good game. So people like social party games that you just relax, you don't think about rules. And then most times, people in the cafe like today, would have to teach the rule book, to them and all. But sometimes some of them now have started, go to the shop, pick up cartons or even pick up some of our Nigerian games and then try to play on their own. But don't ask me which is the best game that we've designed. Because I'm not going to answer.
No, never. That I wouldn't. I think all your games are amazing. And I actually wanted to talk more about the war game that you are releasing. It is called Village War, and it is yes, it is inspired in your culture. And I was reading the story, the background story, and it is so amazing. And you also have an expansion for that we will talk later because it is also amazing.
Thank you. No, Village War, it's we put in so much in Village. It's over a year of constant work, constant conversations. We hired 2 illustrators to work on it before. We didn't like the product and we had to start from the scratch because I wanted it to represent at least at the best way we can at this level. I wanted to represent what was in my head. It's a combination of history, and these are real history. Combination of history, combination of folklore, combination of myth, and then we now garnish it with our own fantasy because we don't want to share the whole realities of them. So, and it's a sequel, and that's the part I love the most. This is an intro to a world that is mixed with modern gaming and the Nigerian Igbo culture. And there's so many things about it. And so many, like I said in the beginning, we don't teach history in school. So every history we want to learn is the things we Google or the things we hear from our parents about Nigeria, about our own cultures. Village War is going to show dates in the Igbo culture that people need to know. For instance, the first time the Europeans invaded the Igbo, the first time, the wars that happened, how the Igbo people were conquered by the British, and then Nigeria were brought together. So these are the underneath histories that we put in, because those are the dates that matters in Village War Sequel. And of course, the first time that the first, in quote, Igbo man descended from the sky and formed the whole tribe. So these are things that we want to show with the game. And it's not just the history part. Every artwork has something that inspired it. And that's the beauty. Every artwork has something that inspired it. And the whole gameplay is massively fun. It's a game that people have played and want to play again immediately. I'm so excited about it. I'm so excited about it. It has to come out. It's been there. We went on to do 2 hours worth of studio sections to get instrumentals. So if you're playing it, you have a feel about real Igbo instruments, and their war songs. Some are sorrowful war songs, and then some are like warrior gingered war songs, like let's go and fight for land and all of those stuff. So yeah, Major is going to be awesome. Like finger crossed.
Oh, it is so beautiful. The art for the game is so beautiful. The colors are gorgeous. It is like, you can see that the entire thing was a very, very, can you hold the box for us? You can see that the entire thing was done with a lot of care and attention. It is.
And there are details. It was done by Felix. Felix is really, really good. Very articulated. There are simple details that you have to look deep, and then you now start seeing all the 5 factions. And you try to capture the arguably, this probably is the first game you see masquerades featured in games, because masquerade is a huge part of our culture. So I don't know why exactly. So he captured the masquerade using their powers. He captured the native priests using their powers. He captured he captured our culture beautifully. He captured the power and the resilience of a woman leader. Because it's normal in my culture to have very, very strong, powerful female leaders. You have very, very old kings. All of these things are captured, and it's good. It's good.
Amazing. Yeah, it is. I can see you're proud of your work, and it is. You should be proud of it. It is very. I really want to play it sometime one day.
One thing is we're also doing creating a Utopia version, so people can play on SPIEL. So you might come into the gaming table if you're free. So Brazilians can actually play that in Tabletopia during SPIEL. Yes.
So guys, go play it, because it is amazing.
Come on, play.
It is so. I'll definitely play it. I will make a gameplay on my channel or something. I'll be there, because it sounds like a really, really good game. One thing we Brazilians can learn with watching this interview and talking to you and watching your games, we are also a very colonized country, and we still don't have this relationship of trying to convert our colonization into something that we can play with and understand better, and not glorify it, because some people will always glorify the colonies, but I think it is a way of mocking them, but also showing the history and interacting with it, owning it, and we Brazilians can learn a lot from it. It is amazing.
So to be honest, instead of there are games that I was talking to a friend, and also a mentor in the industry, and after a conversation, I now realized that I have a lot of war games, and all of these war games there are parts of truth in them. There are 2 coming out. The designs are done. There is the 10 hours during the war, and it's about the Biafra Civil War, where it's called Pogrom, but we try to we call it genocide. It's on Wikipedia, it's everywhere. Biafra, where over 3 million people, women and children, died mostly of starvation and malnutrition. And I want people to feel what 10 hours during the war means, and for you to feel that even if it's just a game. And there's also one called War on Terror. It's my first co-op game where 4 people are tasked to go to a terrorist cell to rescue some hostages. And that's the reality of what is happening in Nigeria. And 4 of them are people the society have casted out, but they have skills that they've learned. There's a retired soldier, there's a volunteer medic, there's probably never have played it out. So, but it's a war game that is supposed to talk about those things, because that's my way of express. I'm not a writer. But I know I can design, and I want to. Even if people don't understand what I'm trying to say now, I'm hoping that someday someone will understand it and let it inspire that person to start taking action.
It is really something we can all learn from here, and it is a very, very inspiring thing. We have, I'm not a specialist in board games, but we have a lot of RPGs that are trying to do that now, to rescue our culture and to rescue our nuances, and giving the regions that are not like the richest, a little light, and little, like, you get to know them, you get to play them, and they get to tell their stories, which is very, very important. You made a video introducing yourself, and you made talking about your experience at the SPIEL convention, and you told us it was your first time. It is your first time. It is my first time as well. I didn't even know that the convention existed until last year, and this year I am in it. It is amazing, yeah. So
I'm still stoked for SPIEL.digital. It was when I started researching in 2016, when we started talking of convention, to know if they existed. I was seeing Gen Con, PAX Unplugged. We started seeing so many, of course, the Comic Con as well. And then that was when I saw SPIEL. And it's a place that you just want to be. This has provided us the opportunity, and we are so excited. I am excited about it because I know what it is. I know what it could do to meet people, to see things, and it's good to see things. It helps open, it's kind of widens your imagination. There are games that we've designed this year that we could have designed 2 years ago, but we didn't, because we did not even know it was possible to do. You see people. That's why community is good. In community, your imagination is broadened. You could depend on the world is kind of together now. It's one community. You could finish your game and you know that you have someone in another country that is willing to play test them and give their own opinion. If you meet friends that can translate the game for you, and this is what conventions do, and that is the things that we are hoping that we'll gain from this, and of course share our own games as well. But in the past, we've been doing street gaming where we go to the street. There are people on social media, and on the street there we say, "Hey, this is a new game. Let's play." And then people are like, "We don't know how to. We'll teach you. And we just sit down and they start playing. Try it. It's fun. It's fun. Anyone watching could try it. Just take a game to the street. Of course, not now because of the whole, you have to do it with caution. Make sure you know the people doing it and all of that. But on the world we were before COVID came in, just if you take a game to anywhere, just if there's a new game, let's play. In Nigeria, most people will be welcome to. Like, okay, let's show us. And once their interest is there, they would be ambassadors of that game forever.
Amazing. I still think it's incredible because it is such a great idea to go to the street and meet people and tell them, oh, let's go play this fast game. It is, I suppose, a fast game and thing you can play like anywhere. It is.
Yeah, I agree. Especially if the game is simple, it's not too strategic that you have to think and a lot of game components. If there are a lot of game components, it's very difficult. But most times the board could be on the laps of 2 people or 4 people. And, when you do that setting, you don't need miniatures. You just need mostly cards or 1 or 2 dice to roll on the board.
Amazing. Okay. That is it. Those are my questions. Is there anything you were suffering? Is there anything you want to add?
You made it easy. You made it so easy. Just, again, sometimes it's uncomfortable and I know.
Yeah, but get used to it because I hope you get even more attention and even more people interviewing you and asking those hard questions. Those answers are amazing. And I think people should hear more what is happening, how NIBCARD was created, how the community is gathering around, and you're helping it grow. And it matters. It is important. And games unite people. And we can see that. We find friends everywhere, right? So is there anything you want to add and any messages you want to pass to our fellow Brazilians that are watching right now?
Yes, most definitely. One, I would want to come to Rio one day. I know that. I want to come to Rio.
Nice.
What I want to say is it's actually good to know that there are a lot of similarities between the 2 countries. Now I'll be following everything you guys do because I want to see where we could learn and also where we could share resources, experience, knowledge, and just from what we were talking from the last call. There are so many things we are doing that are the same. We obviously have the same goal in some areas. So and it's basically applying some of the things we've done here, and it has worked. And just like I said, taking games to the street, it works. As long as you can guarantee your safety, it works. People are looking for something to take their stress away from them. And the global industry is welcoming. Go to Facebook, type board games, and join the game groups. Follow the rules. There are rules of engagement. But once you're there, you get support. They are designing groups that are just for designers. Go in there. You don't get criticized at all, unless you're looking for opinions. And these opinions are within the options you provide. So these are things that I know that have worked for me. And I watch a lot of YouTube. I try to look for things. If I can't afford for something, I look for the free things. They probably are not the best you can have, but you can use that free stuff to build what you want, because you always know that you can develop it later. When you have better resources, you can always make it better. And never ever allow someone make you feel like you're not a designer. Mm-hmm. As long as you've designed something that someone can play, you are a designer. If it's not welcomed in room A, it is welcomed in room B. If it's not welcome in room B, look for room C. Look for that particular room. Eventually, someone is going to love and enjoy it. And that is what I do. Once a game comes to my head, I don't try to think of the end. Immediately I'm thinking of how do I put it on paper? From paper, what is the next step? How do I get an illustrator? Can I do it myself? If I can do it, if there's slightest chance that I can do it myself, I'm doing myself. But if there's no way I can do it myself, then I can't do it myself. So what I'm just trying to say is, start now. If you have a prototype, let your people start playing it. You don't have to make it the best of what it is. There are people that like perfection. And if you like perfection, that's you go on with it. But in this industry, it's more of the growth. than that one product. People want to see you, do on new things. There's so many stories you can work games around. There's so many things that are happening now. Think about it like a movie. People want new movies. Give us the story. Think of when they ended Game of Thrones. We were so mad. Why end it? We want more. And they're giving us more. So that's what the industry is about as well. Design new games. Keep designing. As much as.
Nice. Well, thank you. Thank you a lot, KC.
Thank you.
It was really amazing, and I am very, very, very pleased to have met you and to have had this conversation. I am sure people are watching are also very, very happy with it, and we will all be on Tabletopia playing I forgot the name. Village War. We will all be there playing Village War. And we will try this game at least once. And this contact won't be over, I think we can join as a community and build great things together because we need more of this. We need more conversations.